Emma Morley, I'm really, really happy to talk to you today for Shecan. Tell us a little about yourself and what you do.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie. My name's Emma Morley, and I run a Trifle. We are a commercial design, interior design practice, and we specialise in the design of workspaces. Just hiding myself there for a minute. That's better.
Emma, tell us a little more how you got there. How does one become a commercial designer, interior designer?
Well, I would say if you want to become a commercial interior designer, don't do what I did, which was to go a completely topsy-turvy roundabout way into doing what I do. But I will share it with you, and I will try and make it as brief as possible. So I studied theatre, drama, which included theatre design, at university. So that's what I got my degree in. The aspects of my degree that I loved the most were actually putting together, if you like, the whole look of the stage, the set design, the music, all of that stuff was the thing, I suppose, that it excited me. Alongside also directing was the thing that I really particularly enjoyed. I say that now, like, with relevance, right? So it now has relevance to what I do. Whereas through my 20s, and I would say probably a large part of my 30s as well, it didn't really quite dawn on me actually that the things that I particularly enjoyed studying as part of my degree were actually the things that were, to become the most useful to me now. As I said, I think the thing that I loved about the theatre was that you could, go into a room and it would offer you a completely transformative experience. So would take you away to another place, and you could really feel that, especially with good theatre, you would really feel that. As I came towards the end of my degree, I actually became quite obsessed about wanting to travel and see the world, but I didn't have any money, so I kind of accidentally fell into setting up what became my first business, which was a vintage clothing business. I had a contact in my hometown in Northamptonshire, where I would be able to buy secondhand vintage clothing, and I would sell it on to my university peers who loved me for it, because quite frankly, the clothes that I was selling dramatically cheaper than what you could go to Camden and buy them. We were all in North London, and obviously there were great places you could go and buy vintage clothing, but we were students, so we couldn't really ever afford it. So there was me offering, I saw an opportunity, I guess, but also, offering my friends at uni this kind of great chance. So they bought a lot of stuff from me, and I thought, oh, this is quite fun actually. I quite like actually earning money. And within not too longer time, I was able to save up to go traveling for the first time. And when I was away traveling, it was, as it is for many people, incredibly inspiring. I absolutely love being part of different cultures, seeing different places in the world, connecting with different people, and massively did become quite interested in the interiors, different cafes, different places that you'd see to hang out in. I just never experienced anything like it. Things that were fascinating to me were going into little cafes in Bali where you would sit on cushions on the floor, and you know, there'd just be really relaxed, this kind of beautiful ambience, there'd be lovely plants everywhere, all of that stuff. I loved it, absolutely loved it. So that was always kind of real interest to me, but I didn't really kind of even at that point think, oh, you know, it's interesting that I'm interested in this, I suppose. So for the next 4 years, I carried on selling vintage clothing for periods of time, coming back to the UK, selling, working really hard, and then going off traveling. And I did that for some time and had an absolutely fantastic time doing that. But I kind of got to a point where I started thinking, you know, oh, I should go and work in one of those office places, you know, that like normal people do. I hadn't at that point kind of ever really thought, oh, I want to get into the theatre. There were so many people around me at university that was so talented. And I just, to be honest, I just kind of thought, they're all great at that. They can go and do that. I liked it. I mean, into it, but it's not for me. So I moved back to London, moved in with a friend, and started to kind of explore the world of what in my head was proper work. So I worked for a stint in a travel agency selling flights abroad. That was an absolute disaster. I was terrible at it. I was like the worst sales person on the board. I was literally like always the person at the bottom of the board. I didn't take it very seriously. All I really wanted to do was, I thought it was quite useful to help people find cheap flights. I hadn't really cottoned on to the fact that all the people that were at the top of the boards were, you know, selling more premium experiences. So yeah, that was terrible. It didn't last long. Left that job after not very long at all. And I was walking up the street one day and thinking, what am I doing with my life? I just really don't know what I'm doing. And I ran into a really lovely lady called Catherine, who I had met a few years previously on holiday in Greece with my family. And she was like, wow, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh, I live not far away. She was like, she asked the question that I didn't want to be asked, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I don't really know, to be honest. Anyway, we had a long chat and she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to work somewhere creative where people wear trainers. And she said, give me your CV. I'm working at this brilliant company around the corner called What If. They're an innovation consultancy. I think you'd fit in well. So that was that. I ended up going through quite a hardcore interview process, but a fun interview process nonetheless, and landed a job at What If, amazing innovation consultancy, and spent the next 5 years just doing so much incredible work with them and learning so much about business and people and culture and creativity. And that, for me, I suppose, was like my second university experience. I learned an incredible amount in that time. I worked so hard, so many hours. You know, I was a junior in the business, but I jumped around. They kept offering me other opportunities, and I kind of moved my way up and did well there. But I realized that it wasn't quite for me. However, what had started forming in my mind towards the kind of last couple of years, I'd say, that I was with What If, is I was absolutely fascinated by the way that people would come to those offices and genuinely have an experience. So what they would do is they'd be clients from Sainsbury's or EasyJet, Nike, you know, all the drinks brands. We work with loads of those drinks brands, all sorts of interesting other businesses who came to us from quite ordinary offices. I'm talking now, you know, I'm going back a good 20 plus years, right? So offices were quite ordinary places unless you worked in a creative agency. So if you worked in advertising, creative type graphic design, anything like that, then you'd probably have some quite interesting, cool studio-like spaces. But generally people were working in grey or beige or navy type offices where all the furniture was the same. So it didn't really matter where you went. They were just identical, really, one from another. But when those clients came to us, something quite magical happened to them. They came without their ties, without their jackets. They'd sometimes take their shoes off. They would totally and utterly relax. We had no meeting rooms with tables at that point, or we might have had a couple of small ones, but there was no big boardroom, none of that. It was all sofas. It was very relaxed, very different type of environment. It was very colourful. It was very engaging. There were lots of inspirational things around you at all times, from stimulus to artwork. The floor was colourful. There was a football table machine in the reception, which back then was pretty much unheard of. So it was a really, really unique type of working environment. And I was, one of the things that I don't know that I was actually necessarily asked to do it, but I kind of maybe slightly invented this for myself. But when clients came to us, I wanted to kind of like go that extra mile with them. So we would do things like, I once turned one of the meeting rooms at What If into a teenage girl's bedroom for Nike, who were doing a project on how to get teenage girls into sport. And they wanted to kind of get, you know, under the skin of teenage girls and how they thought. And so that was one of the things that I did. And I remember just absolutely loving it. I loved that. I loved the fact that you know, we could transform this space, but then B, it was that impact that had on them, where everybody was kind of like, wow. And, you know, the ideas were flowing and everybody was having this kind of wonderful creative session, collaborating and being in this space, which was, you know, getting them really to the root of their, you know, who their consumer was. So I said to What If, to one of the bosses at the time, I said, you know, I think we could do something with this. I think there's another arm to the business where maybe it's about creating these experiential type spaces. You know, maybe it's even about going into their own offices and turning some of their dull meeting rooms into these more interesting spaces that either help them connect to their consumers or bring to life, you know, a kind of a theme, an idea. Anyway, and they were like the idea, it's not for us, basically. So I thought, well, I'm going to give that a go myself. So I handed in my notice, although when I handed in my notice, they persuaded me to stay on for a year and redesign their offices, which was an absolutely incredible opportunity. And to this day, I am absolutely amazed that they did that. I had no architectural training, no interior design training, none of that. But they entrusted me with the redesign of their, not just one office actually, but two, because what we did was we were taking on a new office and you know, kind of joining them up. So it was two spaces. So I worked on that for a year, and that kind of then really for me gave me that confidence that I can do this. This is something that I can do. And so I went off, and initially I was freelancing for a while, and I was working in both kind of doing experiential events, design and production. And I was also dipping my toe into the water of actually redesigning offices. And at that point, it was very small projects. It was just, you know, relatively small businesses who had quite dull spaces, who knew somebody at What If, and they'd said, oh, you know, you should get Emma in to help you up. And I was kind of, I suppose at that point, it was more like an office makeover in those early days. Sorry, that's a really not a short
You, you're
story, but
so sweet to so generously tell that story, Emma. I love it because it shows exactly how life can just happen and you fall from one thing to the next, but you ultimately really get to your purpose. And when you realize it's your purpose, then you really go for it, which I love. Emma, I'd love to understand now you've been running this business for a fair while. What is it that you think sets you apart with this? So what is sort of your, people would call Emma for what type of office design and what motivates you to keep doing that?
So there's a few key points with which I think are really now ingrained in our DNA. There are the philosophy of how we do things at Trifle. One of them still remains about making an experience. That has been something that has always felt instinctively important to me about space. And interestingly, it's something that is talked about a lot more now, especially, in view of bringing people back to the office now post-COVID and trying to get people, back into the office. People are talking about that a lot more, that, a space should be an experience. Quite closely connected to that is about making it a destination. So that's about actually making spaces that really are, they are very purposefully designed. They're very considerately designed. So that means making spaces that people want to come to and actually feel they need to come to. They are a destination. They are a bit of a honeypot. And it's creating those reasons to make people really want to go there. So we talk a lot about destination. We talk a lot also about, I'm saying talk, and it's not enough actually. It's what we do. We really do create spaces that also support well-being. That is again enormously important, and something that I have been talking about since I started doing this. And again, now finally, I don't have to keep banging the drum on that one, because when people now come to us, they are incorporating that with their design briefs, which is fantastic. It's so important that we are creating spaces that look after the people who work there. It's absolutely intrinsic to the decisions that we make as we are planning how a space flows, where everything goes, through to the finishing touches like plants and biophilia and natural materials, all of that stuff as well.
Thank you for mentioning that, Emma. I'm wondering, can you give us a few practical facts? So what does that mean? You mentioned plants, you mentioned natural materials. What else do you do to make it this experience, this destination that you're talking about?
So one of the key points to all of this is to be really hyper considerate of the user experience. So when I see a space, and I can tell when I walk into a space how much consideration has been given to the people who work there. And when I say people, I really do mean all the people. So we are so much more in tune and aware now of the needs of, of how diverse the needs are of the people that are working and coming into any space, not just offices. I must add, this is not just offices. This is any space. So from the moment that you walk into a space, it should be easy, accessible, obvious where to go. So all those little touches around kind of signage and how you are supported walking through that space is really important and says an awful lot about whether you've really thought that through. So if I walk into a building and it's not clear, where do I go? You know, who do I need to talk to? How do I get there? You know, is there a toilet that's accessible on this floor, etc., etc.? You can really quickly understand what thinking has gone into that space. Now, I must say that I think there is incredible work being done around this. There's a theory which has been around for a very long time, which is all about inclusive design, and that's a really big one. It's really, really important for well-being, that people really feel like that building is helping them, you know, and it's the air quality, the lighting, the things around me. Are there the tools that I need to do my job? You know, it's all that stuff. Is there a handy place where I can get some water and refreshments? Through to, you know, all that other kind of basic stuff around wayfinding. And it's also really important and connected to the experience, because if you're creating buildings that are, and spaces that are for people, then that's completely connected to a positive experience of that space. So in a work type setting, for us, we talk about designing in a landscape of spaces. So that's, is there somewhere I can go and connect and work with my colleagues easily? Has it got all the stuff around it, from the tech through to stationery, whatever it is that I need in order to be able to work productively? Also, you know, about refreshments, about, you know, are there other types of spaces that I can go to get away from that typical work setup? Okay, I want to come in to the office today, but actually I just need to work really quietly on my own, or I need some thinking space, or I need space where I can go and write my thoughts on a wall somewhere and plan out my thoughts in a way that maybe home doesn't, you know, I can't do that at home. So we're always thinking about all of that in terms of the experience. And I think absolutely key to all of this as well is, you know, making it inspiring, making it full of energy, making it vibrant, you know, using color, not being afraid of using color in space. Just because it's an office, it doesn't mean it has to be all neutral and plain and ordinary. And equally at the same time, understanding that not everybody wants loud, shouty colors all of the time. So it's finding the balance to all of this. It is what all goes in our special sauce.
Emma, I love it. It's fascinating. I don't think I ever thought about it this way. Amazing. Emma, what do you think is your superpower in all of this? What makes you so good at sort of instinctively knowing what people's offices should look like?
I think that I suppose there's a couple of things that immediately come to mind when you say that. I think I am a really big people person. I thrive being connected to people. I'm a little bit of an extrovert introvert, right? Because I also really need time on my own, focused away from everybody. But when I walk into a space, it's like an affliction. You know, I can't walk into a space and not think about these things. They're very deeply instinctive to me, to be always considering what's around me, what do I see, how does it make me feel, how does it what's the reaction that it provokes in me, this space. So therefore, I always want to be applying that to our work at Trifle. You know, it's so a kind of like you know, we talk about ourselves as being insight-led designers, because we spend a lot of time up front with clients, really getting to know them, getting to understand the business, really listening and tuning into what they need as a group of people, as a culture, and as a business and as a brand, you know, so that we're then thinking, when you walk into a space, we want it to feel really unique to that business. So you go in there and it's like, oh, I see the story. There's a story. I'm being told a story here. It's being narrated by this space about this particular brand or company, what they stand for. And a lot of that stuff, I genuinely feel it. I think I'm quite a kinesthetic person, so I really feel that stuff. And I think that's a great benefit. I actually think for me, and I'm not saying this for everybody, but I think for me, not being traditionally trained has actually, for me, turned into a positive. At the same time, I have to hire a lot of people who are very traditionally trained, because we have, you know, a relatively serious design process that we need to follow thoroughly and properly. But for me, leading the business, I do feel that actually I'm always able to see things. I don't look at space. I'm not an architect. I don't look at space like an architect looks at space. I absolutely love working with architects and fully respect their opinions and their knowledge, absolutely. But I think that it adds something. So that's part of our recruitment strategy, is making sure that we have got a real mix of people. And some of them are very traditionally trained, and some of them are not at all.
I love all of what you say, Emma. It sounds so fascinating, and actually sort of it sounds like freedom, you know, when you come to your purpose and actually you didn't go the traditional way, but it gives you this extra bit of freedom to look at things not necessarily through those eyes.
Yeah.
And I like that, because I think life doesn't always lead you from an early age onto what you're supposed to do. So I love hearing that. Emma, I'm wondering, what top tips would you have for other women?
So I think a real big one for us ladies is, and not just us ladies, in fairness, for everyone, I think, that is the imposter syndrome. And it took me, you know, I think, you know, the flip side to me saying I'm not traditionally trained, obviously I then carried that baggage with me for quite a few years, where I just kept thinking, oh, well, you know, but I'm not, you know, I don't speak in the same way that some of my competitors do, or some of my peers do, and I don't have that same kind of knowledge, and you know, and it's interesting, you know, when you've asked me now what my superpower is, I've now been able to flip that over time, you know. I'm 47 now, so I suppose I've had a good few years to realize that I've more than earned my stripes within this industry, and my expertise comes from a different angle, and that's a strength, you know. And so I'd say to anybody that's in a similar position, you know, that sometimes the things that you think are your weaknesses can turn out to be your superpowers, right?
Absolutely. I'm 100% in that basket. Everything I've ever done since university, I have had no official training for. And you just have to jump in, and then you try and swim fast and learn everything that needs to be learned. And there are so many beautiful lessons on the way. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Emma, what are your plans and dreams for your future?
So currently, I'm actually I've spent the last year battling with a chronic health condition, which has thrown a whole other load of life lessons and learnings and messages actually my way. And one of those has been about actually not having to say yes to everything and do all the things and be the person that organizes all the stuff. So one of my you know, a couple of the personal goals, I suppose they're kind of intertwined. One is really focusing in on my health and how I can make sure that going into the next session of life, I am really super fit and healthy. So that's a really key one. And it's also, I suppose, not forgetting the lessons that this last year especially, but probably the last few years have taught me, and that it's good to slow down a little, not too much, but it's good to slow down a little, just adjusting the pace a little bit. But that said, I think as a business, we've got a lot of ambitions. We are doing an enormous amount of work at the moment around marketing strategy and company strategy and people strategy. So we are anticipating growing the business a little bit more. We will always only ever be a boutique business while it's under my watch. We like that kind of family feel of a business. But we want to be, producing even greater, even more original work and quality, design work. And then I think, again, I suppose personally for me, it's actually looking at, where am I going to be in 10 years time or 20 years time. I've never really done any of that myself, so I've been taking some time out to do some of that as well. So yeah.
Good for you, Emma. I really, I wish you all the best. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
talking to us today.
Thanks so much.